All right, so today we are diving into this enhanced martingale strategy. I got to be honest, when I first saw this, I thought, enhanced martingale. That sounds like some kind of drink. But then I took a look at what you sent over from footballprediction.site, and it's all about betting, but with a twist, right? It's supposed to be a safer way to bet. And you know me, I'm always down to try to outsmart chance, so I'm very curious to see what we find here.
Well, it's really interesting how this idea plays on our desire to win, especially that desire that kicks in right after a loss. You know, the classic martingale system is famous for this. You double down after every life because you just know you're going to win. This enhanced version tries to address how risky that is. But whether it's actually safer is debatable.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical already, but before we get into that, can you back up and tell me about that classic martingale approach? I need to understand where this enhanced version is even coming from.
Okay, so picture this. You're at a roulette wheel, and you put money on red. You lose. So you double your bet on the next spin, thinking, this time I'll win back my money and more. If you lose again, you double it again, and again and again until you win. Problem is you can go broke really fast that way, especially if you hit a losing streak.
Yeah, that sounds less like a comprehensive guide, which is what the website calls it, and more like a recipe for disaster. So how does this enhanced version try to fix that?
So they break it down into 5 parts, and the first one tries to address that risk right away. Set strict loss limits. They even say to stop after 3 losses, even if you think the next one is a guaranteed win.
Okay, so that's already more realistic than that classic martingale. But is setting a loss limit really going to help if the whole system is flawed?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's like saying, I'm only going to drive this car with a broken engine for a few miles. You might delay breaking down, but it doesn't fix the problem. But in this strategy, at least, it acknowledges that unlimited losses are a problem, which is more than you can say for the classic martingale.
That's true. So we've got loss limits. What's the next part of this safer betting recipe?
Next up is what they call low-risk odds, specifically between 1.2 and 1.4, basically looking for outcomes that are more likely to win.
Okay, so break this down for me. What do those odds actually mean in real life? Like, say I bet $10 on something with 1.3 odds. What do I get if I win?
In that case, you'd get $3 in profit. Not exactly life-changing money. But the idea is slow and steady wins the race. However, and this is important, odds of 1.2 mean you need to win like 83% of the time just to break even. Even at 1.4, you still need to win 71% of the time.
So it's kind of tricking us a little. The low risk is more about those smaller wins, not about how likely you are to actually win.
Exactly. It plays on our perceptions. We tend to focus more on winning a lot, not the actual chances of winning, which are often way lower.
Sneaky. All right, so we got loss limits to try and minimize losses. And this odd strategy that might be more about how it looks than how risky it really is. What else is there in this enhanced strategy?
This is where the enhanced part really comes in. Remember how in the classic one, you double down after every loss? This one says to increase your bet by a smaller amount, like 50%.
So instead of going all in, you're being a little more careful. I can see how that would feel safer, even if the math doesn't work out. Does it actually make a difference, though?
It does, but it also has its own challenges. It slows down how fast you can lose money, but you also need to win even more often to make up for those smaller wins.
So slower losses, but you need to be even more right more often. I'm starting to get why this enhanced thing might be more about psychology than math.
Exactly, and that takes us to the next part, resetting after a win. After every win, you go back to your original bet, no matter how much you're up.
Wait, so even if I'm on a roll, I shouldn't keep going. Where's the fun in that?
The fun is where things can get dangerous, especially with betting. This strategy is all about consistency and minimizing risk, not about getting a big win. This is supposed to be the enhanced, more careful way.
Okay, I get it. It's about taking the emotion out of it, which honestly is probably good advice for more than just betting. But before we get too deep into that, there's one more thing they mention. Adequate bankroll. And from what they're saying, this isn't just tossing in a few bucks.
You got that right. This is where it gets real.
Okay, so how much are we talking here?
They recommend having at least 20 times your initial bet. So if you start with $10, you need at least $200 just to play. And that's just a start.
Wow. So even with this safer way, you need to be willing to put your money where your mouth is. It's less about outsmarting the odds and more about having enough to cover the losses.
That's a good point. And it shows something important about anything that promises easy money. Always read the fine print and know the risks.
Very true. But let's say our listener has that bankroll. What does this actually look like in action?
Well, they give an example, but it's important to remember.
This is just one example, and real life is never this neat and tidy, is it?
Right, but it shows how it's supposed to work. So they start with a $10 bet on something with 1.3 odds. Remember, with those odds, a win gets you $3.
Yeah. Small but steady, I guess. Though after hearing about how much money you need just to get started, $3 doesn't seem like much anymore.
That's the thing with this stuff. It always sounds good in theory. Real life is a lot messier. But anyway, in this case, the first bet wins, so they're up $3. But they go back down to a $10 bet. They're sticking to the system.
No riding that wave of luck, huh? Discipline over desire. A true enhanced strategist. So what happens in this perfect example?
Well, they have to show how tough the system is. So naturally, the next $10 bet loses. And here's where the enhanced part comes in. Instead of doubling down to $20, they only go up to 15. That 50% increase we talked about.
Right, because going double or nothing already feels risky, even to me. But even if it's slower, wouldn't you still lose money if you keep losing?
That's what it all comes down to, and it really depends. It depends how often you win, what the odds are. And honestly, a little bit of luck, too. Remember how we said those low-risk odds might be a little misleading? This is where that matters.
So going slow feels safer. But it only works if you're winning enough to make up for those times you lose. Which if you need to win like 70% of the time isn't exactly a sure thing.
Exactly. And we haven't even talked about how our brains work. We don't always make the most logical choices. But let's get back to this example. The $15 bet wins, and they make $4.50. And they go back to their $10 bet. So even with a loss, they're still up.
So the enhanced thing isn't about never losing. It's about trying to control how much you lose when you do. And not going crazy with your bets when you're feeling emotional.
You got it. But there's more to this consistency thing that I think is interesting. The website talks about mental discipline, which when it comes to betting might be the hardest part.
Totally. Even just talking about this, I'm getting caught up in the wins and losses.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it'd be like with real money.
Right. Our brains love rewards and hate pain. And betting even the safer way plays into that. The classic martingale uses that against you. You lose, you want to win it back, so you bet more, and it just keeps going. This enhanced version tries to add some logic into that with those limits and smaller increases.
So it's like this enhanced martingale is about managing your own brain.
Yeah.
As much as it is about picking the right bets.
Exactly. It's trying to bring some control into something that's totally random. And this is where it gets really interesting. Your article says this strategy could work for other stuff too. They actually say real-life applications, which I think is worth talking about.
Yes. This is what I was hoping we'd get to. Because even if you never bet on anything, this idea of outsmarting your own brain is fascinating.
Definitely. And that's what I think is really valuable about this enhanced martingale, if we can even call it that, outside of gambling.
Okay, so what kind of real-life applications are there?
Well, think about anything where you take risks hoping for a reward.
Investing. Starting a business. Trying to eat healthy during the holidays.
Exactly. All of those and more. Even something like starting a new habit has that risk and reward, that discipline and temptation. And the main ideas of this strategy, setting limits, making small changes, being consistent, those all matter in those situations too.
So it's not really about the martingale part. It's more about the mindset. That's pretty deep.
It is. This betting system, when you really think about it, is about managing risk, staying on track, and not letting losses stop you. And that's helpful in so many parts of life.
Okay, that's really making sense to me. So this enhanced martingale is like a new way of thinking about risk and reward.
Exactly. And I think we can use that in so many ways, even beyond what you already said, like with money, for example.
Money natures.
Yeah, most of us aren't exactly rolling in it right. We got to be careful about how much we risk.
Exactly. And just like with those betting odds, we need to be realistic about winning in other parts of life too. Not every investment is going to make you rich. Not every new habit is going to stick the first time. We're all going to have some losses.
So it's about thinking long term, even when things don't work out right away. No more betting the farm on getting rich quick. Exactly. Slow and steady wins the race, remember? And that's where resetting after a win is really useful. Like say you make a good investment. Or you finally stick to your workout routine for a whole month. This enhanced martingale mindset would say, enjoy the success. But don't let it make you take bigger risks than you can handle.
So you're basically saying don't bet more than you can afford to lose.
Exactly.
And thinking about those loss limits, it's like you have to know your own limits with willpower too.
That's a great point. It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between pushing yourself and setting yourself up to fail. And that's something we all deal with.
Sometimes it feels like we're so busy chasing the next big win
Yeah.
that we forget about the losses and how to learn from them.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the real lesson from this whole enhanced martingale thing. It's not about winning every time. It's about thinking about risk and reward in a smarter way.
Wow, so we went from sports betting to life advice in like an hour. That's why I love these deep dives. You never know where we'll end up.
Yeah. And if there's one thing I want our listeners to think about, it's this. What if the best strategy is the one you make yourself? By using these ideas of managing risk, being disciplined, and being realistic for the things that matter most to you.
Now that's something to think about. Thanks for breaking all that down with me.
Happy to be here.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the real win is learning and exploring. Until next time.